Here's what most people studying energy agree, that the world's energy demands will continue to grow. That in the near to medium term, there's no magic solution out there that's going to start to replace the things that we have today. It's oil, gas, coal, nuclear, a little bit of renewables, a little bit of hydro. That's kind of the mix. By 2100, it will have to be very different than it is today, because there isn't enough oil to just continue growth, not even linearly. So it just, it will have to be very different than today.
I think it would be fair enough to say that the shift away from oil dependency in our economies is an enormous task. Our agricultural system is completely dependent on cheap energy. The transport system is completely dependent on it. Virtually, you could pick our lives up in 2011 and wring them out like a sponge, and oil would pour all over the floor.
We have already gotten addicted to oil. Oil is here and we will need it for a very long time. I think the addiction that we have to get on, or perhaps, as I used to say, the inspiration of thinking slightly differently, is to teach, actually, to get awareness of what energy costs are and how you as a person can influence it.
I hope we do have a breakthrough to a more renewable, greener economy. And I think when we do it, we're going to discover that a greener economy, although there will be some economic costs, it will probably cost us 1% or so of our growth every year in GNP. But I think that what we will experience in terms of the quality of life that we live will be worth much, much more than that expense.
The entire energy system is very complex. And the thing that we need to accept is we had better get used to it. Because the living world is complex. Today we have a whole theory called complexity theory. So with the energy question, for instance, you cannot say that biomass is the solution, or photovoltaics is the solution, or wind is the solution. It depends. There has to be a whole collection, a whole bouquet of energy sources used differently at different times in different geographical regions and so on. And that is the true for all eco-design. It is complex.
You have to look at where it is that you're living and understand the problems that your consumption of resources places on your neighbors, the burdens that your consumption places on your neighbors, because those are going to be different as a function of where you're living. And once you understand that, then you can design for better integration into the environment in which you're designing.
A lot of it has to do with looking to the past and remembering how we designed before we were dependent on mechanical systems and lighting systems. And when we remember some of those principles and mix those with the latest technology, where we look to intelligent systems in our homes, in our buildings, that can show us how much energy we're using, can show us in real time how much water we're using, which then helps impact that we can use less. When we mix that with the old ideas, that's the winning combination.
We should focus on climate change, but we should focus on it smartly. Right now, for the last 20 years, we've been focusing on a Kyoto-style approach that hasn't worked, and that for a very simple reason won't work. It's essentially arguing, let's all pledge to make it more costly for us to have energy. That's not something that's going to win you votes. And even if you did it, it would actually do very little to avoid global warming 100 years from now. Instead of trying to make fossil fuel so expensive nobody wants it, which is going to fail politically and economically is a bad idea, we should be focusing on making green energy technologies much cheaper. If solar panels were cheaper than fossil fuels, everyone would buy them.
Energy right now is a non-issue. You have it, you stick something in the wall socket and it works. While that is a great achievement almost by humanity, it's wonderful that we have come to that level of luxury. On the other hand, it also stopped us from thinking about energy. We don't care anymore where it comes from, and that really is at the heart of the problem. Once you start generating your own power with solar panels, you immediately become interested in how much energy am I actually getting from those panels, and how does that relate to what I use in a day, and how does that relate to other people that have panels. So even if you only have 1 or 2 solar panels on your roof, your interest and your commitment to the energy questions increases dramatically.
The existing grid is aging infrastructure, so most of the grid was sort of installed in most countries sort of 50 years ago, and it's all predicated on the idea that you can have a few large power stations and send all that power to millions of consumers. And the vision of a smart grid really is sort of based on the idea that if we're going to make more use of renewable energy, that energy is distributed, so all of those consumers will actually be generating some energy themselves. That energy can't be predicted, so if you have a large power station, you can turn it on, you know how much it's going to produce. If it's renewable, you can't do that at all. So it's really a case where the existing electricity grid can't really be sort of tweaked to cover this sort of setting. It really needs a new vision of a smart grid.